Okay. Hi, Maury.
Hi, Maury.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
This is Carol and Kier, and we're down in El Cañon, which is down in the Santa Fe River Canyon next. And I'm going to a class, but Kier's going to be here.
And we irrigate off the Santa Fe River. We're downstream irrigators on the historic rail ditch, and we share the ditch. It's a private ditch with BLM since there's only 2 water users, so we can't have an association. And we live in paradise, but it's a life sentence in paradise with no chance for parole, is what people say.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having this.
Morning, Robert. Good to see you. Hi, Michelle.
Morning.
So everybody knows everybody. And one of the things we're going to start out with, at the last meeting, we discussed the kind of green initiatives that Tucson's doing. And we got all excited because of the number of rain gardens and really progressive things they were doing. And so I tapped into probably the greatest Santa Fe resource in terms of conservation. And I got a hold of Christine Chavez, who immediately said, oh yeah, we've been in touch with those folks in Tucson. We've been doing some of those things already. And I went, that's a step ahead of us for sure. And then she had the ability, she had a gentleman, and I hope I pronounced his name right, Catlo Shippeck, who is a head of a nonprofit actually in Tucson, who made a presentation that Christine arranged with a number of government entities, Albuquerque and Santa Fe primarily, to talk about what Tucson was doing. And it's absolutely fascinating. We will send you the link to that meeting. But it was, and I'll let Christine, I'm going to let you take over in a second, because I want you to talk about some of the things maybe that you've taken from Tucson. But one of the things that really impressed me is the values. It was like value driven, and it's not a bureaucratic decision. It's not something that is artificial. It comes from community values. And what's interesting to me in terms of what we're doing, we seem to have a lot of government support for these initiatives, or at least the appearance of government support, but we don't have as much community support. And so it's almost like not a reversal, but it's a different challenge, because I think we as leaders of our communities need to get our communities to understand. It's like the little things, the value of rainwater. You know, that simple statement, you just go, wow, value of rainwater. Yeah, let's talk about that. But they do things like they water orchards. They've done some really cool things, and they're using stormwater to do that. So with that, Christine, would you tell us a little bit about your experiences with the Tucson folks?
Sure. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I know some of you on the call. Matt, it's really nice to see you. I manage the city's water conservation program. And, you know, we were, I guess, Capo Shippick with the Watershed Management Group, he's friends with a lot of our friends here in Santa Fe. Andy Otto, Reese Baker, Aaron Kaufman, you know, all of our rainwater experts here in Santa Fe. And they kind of introduced me to Catlo, and I entered into a small, you know, contract with him just to pick his brain and spend some time with him, have him spend some time with my staff, have him spend some time with our water conservation committee. He also presented at the state New Mexico Water Conservation Alliance meeting. And if any of you are interested in that group, I am the president of that association, but we bring a lot of different speakers to talk about some things. So the presentation that you're going to see the recording of was actually at that meeting. Just to put it into, you're going to be like, what meeting is this? That's another one. But what we were really interested in is the sort of the private well, the private-public relationship that had been built between the Watershed Management Group and the city of Tucson. As all of you know, we really tried to build the same type of model, here in Santa Fe. And I think that's why we've been so successful, is that we don't try to do the work ourselves. We really support the experts in our community who are already working on that. And several of you we've had partnerships with, as a result of that. So what we learned from Catlow is that, there are a lot of things that are possible with that type of partnership. The city itself has looked at rainwater or, our focus right now is on the outdoor landscape. We know that we've really picked a lot of the low-hanging fruit on the residential end with our rebate program and a lot of the things that we've already been doing. But, in order for us to look at other incentives, we have to look at other cities who have kind of done that, successfully, so that we can try to model what they've done. So he spent a ton of time with us. He actually even came to Santa Fe and, met with all his friends, and I got to, kind of sit in on that. And, they're working very closely together. So a lot of the people that you consider experts here already have this, it's a friendship. So it's way beyond, a professional relationship. So he's been very gracious about sharing information with us. And I sent Carl an email that just had a list of resources, his PowerPoint presentations. There's a copy of I just downloaded it this morning. Oh, shoot. The Green Infrastructure for Desert Communities Guide. It's a free download, and it's just, like I said, a wealth of information. But the city of Tucson is who I want to tap into next. And so I've kind of moved from Catlow. He's introduced me to the city of Tucson, and I'm working with them to see, how did you support this nonprofit's work and establish, they have incentives for rainwater harvesting up to $2,000 per residential household. But you meet with the city of Tucson to develop that proposal. You have to go through a class. I think it's a 3-hour class. And so there's a lot of, there's a lot of work that kind of has to happen to get that rebate, but I mean, it's a very successful rebate. And then they also have a mini grants program where they, they fund small green stormwater infrastructure projects. And so that's pretty interesting to me. I wish, I want us to move in that direction. I was really excited when Carl brought it up. I've also had Aaron Kaufman talk to me about it. Andy Otto has some ideas. And so this is the time when I feel like when a project starts to gain a lot of attention and momentum, that's a great opportunity to focus on it. So I'm happy to refocus my efforts now and work with this group to see, how we can look at a partnership that's similar. I'm not sure what the goals of the collaborative are and where you guys want to go. And I hope we could just open the table and brainstorm those ideas. But I think there's a lot of potential for us to do the same types of things, especially now since the city's really focusing on outdoor use. And this is like a great way to get at that. So I'll answer any questions that you have. And I just hope we can have a discussion about how we can move forward.
I mean, this is really just so cool because literally at our last collaborative meeting, we were just kind of thinking about this and it seemed like a neat idea, but it's actually something we can get actively involved with pretty quickly, it sounds like. And certainly it is along the lines of everything that we've been doing in terms of helping the watershed. And so I'm very excited about this. And I think the opportunity is there for us to be able to do something significant. And one of the things I will point out is the importance of the city and county working together on initiatives like this, because as I think we all realize, the city has a very strong conservation effort, and we don't share that same effort with the county. And so I think this is really an opportunity to really bring all of that stuff forward, and let's really start working together to make this a really amazing opportunity to do something really significant, So yeah, let's open up any ideas, questions that you have for Christine. I think this is just exciting. Go ahead, Bobby.
So Christine, so, I've found it extremely difficult to work with the city in terms of getting something as simple, I find as simple as a curb cut. And I spoke with Zoe, whose name I can't think of, who also works for the city. And she, agreed that it is difficult to do that. So just that little piece, how do we get the support of the city, like the abilities for the city to do something like a curb cut? How do we get that? How do we get that support so that we can move forward as individuals or as groups and do our own conservation efforts like they do in Tucson?
A great question. I did make it sound so easy and just a straight, really, really easy effort. But we started these conversations with Catlow 2 years ago. And yeah, there's a range of things that need to happen to make something like this happen. On the city's end, I would imagine that the joint city-county water conservation group could maybe start that discussion, since it's going to involve, both the city and county potentially, and developing a program. I'm really excited. I had Michelle Hunter on our radio show this morning, and I'm really happy she's a counterpart for me over at the county. And together, we're really excited about, engaging that committee in discussions like this about joint opportunities. And so I will see, the city and county are working together, and Michelle and I, we're that team that's going to head the conservation piece. And so it would be great to just land maybe this topic there and see at least who are the stakeholders involved. If I need to bring Zoe Isaacson in to talk about curb cuts, we need to bring in some city staff beyond just the water division and the county, to just talk about what restrictions are in place now and what do we need to do to change them. But Michelle and I are engaging in some policy changes with some of the work that we're doing. And it could involve, if we decide to take on an incentive like this, we would have to possibly change the code as it's currently written to allow for things like that.
Oh, do it.
The Santa Fe Watershed Association, I'm not at all ignoring that partnership, but they have really engaged and looking at how to move these things forward already. So they, of course, would be part of that discussion. How do we just all work together on this one specific issue? I think that's the best way to to handle that.
There's one other little thing, which is that Brad Lancaster started the work in Tucson, and he began just working with his own little yard in Tucson, and then he did his own curb cut, I think, or I don't know, somehow or another he did that. And then his neighbors saw what he was doing and so on, and it grew that way. So that is, Carl, you said something about, that the people, our communities are not really engaged with that. And so if they can see, I think there's the thing, if you can see what can happen individually, then I think it could grow in that aspect. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
If I can just add to that a little bit. So Brad Lancaster, another buddy of all these guys, and they all kind of learned from him. We have a similar renegade in our community in Reese Baker. He has certainly, if you walk through his yard, you're like, oh my gosh, I never thought this would be possible. But he's kind of our person here in the city, and he's so great about sharing knowledge and letting people tour that space too. But he has definitely inspired lots of people, including myself and a lot of people on this call to, go in this direction. So he would be on our side for sure and advocating for those things. It's just, I think, a matter of gathering another group that just focuses on that, and we start bringing in these different conversations that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to jump off of that a little bit more, we are lucky that even though not everyone in our community yet knows about the benefits of rain gardens or what green stormwater infrastructure is, we do have a very dedicated contingent that's more than, just, a few people, and it's really growing. And I think we're very delighted at the support from the city and the county, and that knowledge is already growing, and we do already have something like 50 rain gardens throughout the city and some in the county as well. So we're not starting from ground zero by any chance, but I think a question I have for our colleagues at the city and the county is how can we as community members kind of take advantage of the interest that is starting to really build in city and county government right now to support those changes in code, or make it easier for you all to then do your jobs or incorporate in your jobs approving these projects, or making it easier for community members, or insisting on communities incorporating this type of infrastructure. What can we do to help spread that word, or have those conversations to support you in advocating for those kinds of more systemic changes, so that it doesn't have to just be a yard by yard thing anymore, that maybe it's time. I think it could be time for us to really think like, okay, we are going to be the next Tucson in this way, or we're going to do it the Santa Fe way, and really make this a very visible and public and tangible part of our identity and our relationship with water in our watershed.
Well said. Really was. That was to the heart of things, Maury. Thank you very much. Wow. I mean, this is like this whole awakening in terms of what we can actually do something. And I'm really excited to learn that we have so many resident rainwater experts, and we really need to bring them to the forefront and make everybody aware of what these guys are doing, and ladies and folks are accomplishing. And it really becomes an educational process. And I think that's one of the keys that we've talked about all along is the need to educate people about water. And this certainly is one of those top 3 topics in my mind of things that we can actively do, that we should be doing, and that we need to convince people to be involved with. And I think people will. I mean, one of the things that always concerns me is if we try to force people to do things, it doesn't often work. But if we can educate people and get them to understand why these things are happening, why are we doing these things, that it really does make a difference in terms of being able to accomplish things. So other questions for Christine? Again, thank you, Christine. This is really exciting. And thank you very much. And Maura, you too. Those words were beautiful. So thank you. So any other questions?
Carl, if I can just add one more thing. Maury, you had asked like what are our next steps, or what are ways that you can do to support, I think, us on the city county end. I think our next step for me, like I said, I'm really excited because when I start to see like a lot of different people asking me the same question, I really get excited, because then it's not just me and a small group trying to move an idea through. Now it looks like there's a lot of momentum around this. So I think this is a really great opportunity for us to explore this together. And like I said, in the joint committee, I think that'd be a great way to discuss this, but maybe even before then, Michelle and I can try to put together like a stakeholder list and, try to just a small group come together and brainstorm what we would need to do. But I think maybe even Michelle and I need a tiny bit of time just to check with our people and let them know, oh, this is a great opportunity for us. We've got a lot of excitement around it, and can we explore it further? And I think the answer will be yes, especially on the city end. But I'm happy that you asked me to be here, and I'm really happy you're all interested. And I really do feel like, things happen at the right time when it's just the right time. So thank you. Let me know if you have any other questions.
You had a question.
Yeah, hi, apologies for joining late, but I just wanted to quickly respond to Maury's question. One thing that citizens can always do is contact your city councilors or county commissioners. I think the most successful efforts are both bottom up and top down, meaning they have staff support and leadership support. So I'll throw in the link to the county commissioners, and you can find how to contact them that way.
Idea. Absolutely. What's interesting to me, though, and I'm talking at least the county commission perspective, is I think that almost all of those folks would really get into this. It's one of those moments. If you go back, 5 years, 10 years, you wouldn't have that kind of vision, in a sense, or ability to understand these kind of things. But especially with some of the newer members of the county commission, I think there's a real opportunity to do something significant from a county perspective. And I certainly have seen a lot of support for these things with the city council as well. So the time, as Christine says, there's sometimes when it's just the right time to do something. And it just this really, to me, becomes a real important objective for the collaborative, is to help this process along in any way we can. And certainly what I'm even thinking, that maybe the next collaborative meeting, this is all we talk about, and we bring in some of these experts and let them chat with us and get some ideas and really start to build support for everything on every level, from the state, local, and the federal level, Mr. Miller. And I know if you don't know Matt Miller, he has been part of the collaborative almost from the beginning. Worked for Senator Udall and is now working for Tricia Ledger Fernandez. And just a great guy and very interested in our water issues, and has been very supportive of what we're doing. So that's an important element. I mean, this drought thing ain't going away, folks, and we can appreciate all the rain that we had this year, and that's wonderful. But down deep, we all know that this drought is going to be sustained for an extended period of time, and whatever we can do to help water in our community is something that we should take seriously and work hard on. And again, it goes back to those community values, value of rainwater, and getting people to understand that what water is all about. And so what other questions do we have for Christine? And Michelle, I'm really excited to hear that you're on the conservation side of this. I didn't know that, in all honesty. I mean, you wear a lot of hats, and I think some of those hats have been changing a little bit as we go along. But that's exciting to me, is that we've got a team now between you and look at the smiles on your face. But yeah, we've got a team between the county and city that really can help lead us. And believe me, we'll be happy to be led. And so anything we can do to support your efforts, anything we can do to make things better, easier, we certainly will do that as a group. And I look forward to sharing this information with more of the collaborative members. I know we don't have a huge group today, but we'll certainly get the word out, and maybe a little summary of this meeting, because I think it's that important, is to get people to really look at this and pay attention. Bobby, you had something?
Yeah, I want to know, so Carl, you mentioned about the collaborative getting together and coming up with some possibilities, but we only meet every 2 months. So that's for you. And then Christine, if we do come up with some kind of, I don't know, group of people who have, who want to initiate this or work on it, or, and also Michelle, you as well. So how do we then approach you to do something?
Well, I think maybe we need to just maybe take a step back with a few people in this group and decide the best way to do this. The fact that there's so much interest and support around it, not only from this committee, but from other groups, I think is really positive. But just so that I'm clear, because I wasn't at the last meeting, and I'll watch it just to make sure, but is this group really interested in looking at incentives similar to the city of Tucson offered by the city and county on rainwater, on rain gardens and other green stormwater infrastructure projects, or what was the main?
We, in all honesty, just touched on it. It was an idea that came up, and we said, hey, that sounds pretty cool. So let's do a little research and figure out what is going on. I think is in terms of moving forward, Christine, what you said is you and Michelle spend some time getting something together. And yeah, you're correct, Bobby, that we don't meet often enough. Maybe we do a special meeting of some sort. And we announced it and we tried to get as many as our political leaders and those folks involved. But I mean, this again is just a very preliminary kind of observation. But I think what we need to do is let Michelle and Christine do their work, come back to us, and then we can start looking at how to plan it in terms of the best way to move forward. So they will take kind of the leadership role and get us to understand exactly how we can help support their ideas and obviously offer our ideas as well. And obviously, I think the collaborative and the Watershed Association will play major roles in helping spread the word. But I think a special meeting that we can get some of the policymakers invited to, kind of a formal presentation of some sort, would be maybe something we can think about long term. But again, I think it's a matter of educating people and getting people to understand that there's actually something we can do, and we can do it in a way that we're all going to feel good about, and it's going to be make a difference for our community. And I think that's pretty amazing, you know. Having been at this for a while, this is one of those things that's like a concrete thing we can grab onto and say, let's do this. So,
Christine, you mentioned, I think it's the rain catcher guy, Rios, is that correct? Yeah, so there was a tour of his thing, which I missed, but can that be set up for the collaborative group to go to his place?
Yeah, he's so great. I know for the Next Generation Water Summit in June of 2023, that will be one of our community tours. And we'll see many rain gardens, but we always stop at the end at his house, and that's kind of the best part. But if I hear of any tours he's giving, I mean, he gives them kind of all the time, but I'll reach out and see if there's an opportunity. Probably be best to go in the spring anyway, when his garden is, you know, his yard is, you know,
where
it's
does he live?
right in the center of town, which is really amazing. He's not
That's so cool.
and yeah, it's on it's where the old Kmart used to be on St. Michael's.
Yeah.
Pretty close to that, right in the middle. There's an urban forest right in the middle of the city. It's pretty incredible. But really quick though, I just do want to manage some expectations before we start really blowing this up. And the biggest difference between the city and the county right now is that the city already has a rebate program and a way to incentivize their city customers, and the county does not. And so, you know, to ask the city and county to start, you know, giving an incentive would be a very, very big ask. But, and also the county, and we talked about this on the radio show today, it's not just the city Santa Fe utility, you know, area, it's the county. So, I mean, that's a big ask. But I think what we can do, and I think what is really reasonable right now, is that first of all, we've had a lot of rain, and we know that with climate change, we can expect that there's going to be intense rainstorms when we get them. So big opportunity. The second is there's a lot of money out there right now. And so where we could start a pilot or start to look at what this would look like would be to first maybe try to acquire some funding to manage a city county program. And that way we're not asking people also to fund an initiative that we can't currently fund. And like I said, the city is in a different place, but to ask Michelle to implement a rebate program and to bring in funding to manage the entire county, so just to manage the expectations, I think that there is opportunity, but let's start kind of in a pilot program, try to get funding, and then we can convince everybody pretty easily after that, I think.
Jill?
So forgive my ignorance in asking some of these questions, but so I live in the city, which puts me at a slight disadvantage with respect to what kind of educational things are out there for folks in the county. And so I'm wondering from a person who works at the county but lives in the city, what of Christine's educational materials and messaging gets out to the county? I'm just wondering, for those people who live in the county, do you all hear or see any of the things that I see in the city with respect to Save Water Santa Fe and those kinds of things? And if not, it seems like we need to start on the same kinds of tracks that Christine has already done, like messaging and marketing and doing the kinds of outreach that Christine has been doing for 7 years. It just doesn't seem to me like there's that same kind of, like she's already said, that same kind of base for this kind of a program in the county. And, you know, if that's something that we need to do, we need to do that. I'm just kind of looking for some input from folks like you who are out there. And I will also tell you that one of John Dupuy and my sort of next goals is to actually hire a community outreach person who does conservation, water conservation work. And so, I mean, this is more of our long-term plan, but John and I have wheeled it in to be more of a short-term goal now because of this hole that we see with respect to this stuff. And so this is really helpful to me in writing this new job description, because I don't have a lot of information from my old work as a water quality person in this new world that I'm in, except through all of the work that Christine has done and me attending the Water Conservation Committee meetings and things like that. So I just need a little bit of input, I think, to be able to really start to get the county on this same path that Christine has already blazed, but we need to get on it. And so I'm just looking for a little bit of input from folks.
Well, I can offer an observation because I serve on the Santa Fe County Water Policy Advisory Committee. And it's one of those things where the committee went through a couple-year process to develop a drought plan and made a kind of a presentation before the county commission, and that's it. I mean, it's one of those unfortunate moments where you create a document and it's really looks nice, you put it on the shelf and don't pay much attention to it. And so to have someone to direct those, to act on decisions that are made by the Water Policy Board, which can recommend, you know, policy changes to the county commission. We've been missing the Christine link. Many times in our WPAC meetings, we talk about we need a Christine, and so if we can, that's what we do. We need a person who can meet with us and talk about things that we want to do and pass it on to the county commission so that we can really start to act on these things. I think that's from a bureaucratic standpoint and from an administrative standpoint, I think that's what we need to do to make sure, because we've got a lot of bright people on that committee, but it's like, I think we get frustrated because we got a lot of great ideas, but we can't act on them. We kind of, you know, have another discussion about drought or another discussion about how we could reach all the, let's see, there's 12,000 wells in Santa Fe County. 10,000 of those wells are in the county, 2,000 are in the city. And so when you look at that, those are the people that we have to engage on some level and be able to get them to understand their role in protecting our local water resources. And that's not a hard sell, but it's not an easy sell either. It's just a matter of getting out and communicating with people and getting them to understand what has happened to our water over the last 40, 50 years. So did that help at all, Michelle? I understand your you know, kind of predicament and appreciate that. And I'm glad you brought it to the forefront, because that's exactly what we need to be able to talk about. We need that outreach for the county to be able to reach people. And I will say this all the time, if it's coming out our way, please make it in Spanish as well, because it's so important that we have that connection with the Mexican immigrant population in our area. And their understanding. So
that's awesome, Carl. That is super helpful. And so what I think, since we have a WPAC meeting tonight and Christine will be there, I think that we can talk about this like really pragmatically, where the rubber hits the road and how we need another person another smart person who knows stuff to be able to do the kinds of work that Christine has done. I mean, I'm not saying I want to step out. I'm just saying we need more.
No, you need it. I know how many things you have on your plate, and this isn't something you need to add to it. And I wish we could clone Christine. That was one thought we had at one point. If we could clone her, that would be kind of cool. But anyway, I agree with that completely. Michelle, I understand your situation. I understand the kind of interesting start to your career in the county government and all the different kind of things you've had to deal with. And so now I think there's kind of starting to settle in, I hope. And I think having this additional person who can go out to communities, can go out to the community associations and start meeting with people and talking to people about how they can participate in saving water.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that it really will make for a good conversation this evening after doing the radio show with Christine, which was really fun, and just kind of talking about how collaboratively we're able to work between the county and the city. And I can just see that there's some momentum now. And, I've been with the county now for 4 months, and I'm starting to, feel, like you said, like I've kind of found my rhythm, my legs a little bit. And Christine, we've definitely been able to touch base more within the last couple of months and attend each other's meetings and kind of get this going. And I was going to say flowing, but I was afraid that was too bad of a pun.
I think it's flowing.
But yeah, I really do feel it. It's building. And I think between La Cienega and the county and the city, I really think that we have something that's going to start to really blossom in a way that I think we've been hoping for a long time.
Any other questions for Christine or Michelle?
Well, I'll throw out too, not hopefully too much of a shameless plug, but I think that, our community is really blessed to have a lot of great community organizations and groups, including this collaborative. But we're available for you to lean on in your interim periods to help get the word out, or, something that we can offer is a little bit more flexibility or speed to respond to specific conversations, or and for the Watershed Association, for example, we it's really important for us to be communicating accurate and up to date information, and we can do that through our channels. And of course, we're not reaching as many people as the city or the county can reach, but sometimes we can reach people in additional or meaningful ways and facilitate deeper conversations and support that. So we do have the capacity to kind of support those goals as well. So but we're not the only organization that has that capacity. So I think really leaning on your community members, because there are so many here that care and are knowledgeable and have connections and avenues to share. So that's a benefit that I invite you and encourage you to keep looking into and to build into your plan for how you're reaching folks, that it doesn't have to just be you or just this one person. We're all part of your network too.
And I so appreciate that. And I've always kind of had in my brain that we need to start in La Cienega because of the community that's there already there. It's like you have done a lot of what Christine has done in the city in La Cienega just through your grassroots efforts with this, this association and the other community associations that are down there. So thank you so much for that. And I did sort of have La Cienega in my head as the place to start. So thank you.
Maury, I want to make sure you understand how much we appreciate the Watershed Association. And it's I love Andy, and I love you too. And I think what you bring is kind of a new energy. And maybe you don't reach as many people as other organizations, but you reach some really important people. And that is so key to what we're doing. And so, yeah, you'll be right in the thick of this. So don't worry, the Watershed will be a major play a major role in this entire effort as you have in the past. So thank you very much.
I've
So
got one more thing.
okay.
So yes, and yes, thank you, Carl and Maury and Michelle and Christine. So Christine, I live near Galisteo Street and Coronado Lane, and it's the bottom of a little hill. Galisteo goes down, and then there's always a huge puddle right at the corner of Galisteo Lane. And then the city comes and grades the road again, and then the puddle reforms, and there's now like I don't know what to call it. It's like a small car could disappear into the hole, into the puddle. So, rather than going through this same process over and over and over again, like when it rains, there's going to be another hole there and another giant puddle, and there is a little culvert over there. But rather than having that water always, the water doesn't make it over there. So, is this one of those things where, you've got to, or I've got to get in touch with somebody else from the city but there's got to be a way to use the water rather than sending it down into the sewer. That's, that. So what?
I think that's why we're all here. I mean, every time it rains, just know what a missed opportunity it is. I mean, when you understand how it works, I mean, we want to hold all that water in our city and avoid it from just running down the river. I mean, the rains don't change our water situation either. And a lot of people think that, oh, it's raining, we're out of the drought, everything's better, but it's really totally insignificant. I mean, it helps our plants in the moment and reduces our demand, but I mean, it doesn't change anything long-term. But, creating this type of infrastructure in our city, and we know this from our city residents, and I'm sure that you guys all know that, but we've heard this in public input time and time again, but we compete with like trying to build an urban forest, but yet not increase outdoor demand. I mean, and then not make the office of the state engineer upset. I mean, there's a lot but I mean, I do think that there's a lot of possibility, and this is all very hopeful because we've really been trying to support this type of work where we can, and we do through the our support of the Santa Fe Watershed Association and our partnership with lots of other organizations, but we haven't developed an incentive program around it. And so that's the biggest thing. If we really want people to do it, then we want to build an incentive program. But then we also want people, we also want to consider the social equity piece of that too, because sometimes only people who have a lot of money can take advantage of the rebate program.
Right.
So that's where I think the mini loans come in, and other ideas, but we've got to study this, and our approach is to study it at a pilot scale and to get really great results, and then we take it forward as a permanent program and implement it as part of our everything else that we do. But it kind of has to, we've had a lot of success studying it in a pilot and then expanding it to a full program, and so that may be something we could consider with this project. But I'm just really excited about meeting with the group that can really decide, okay, what are our next moves? Where do we land this? Where do we discuss it? What kind of support do we need? And I think we can do that with some of the people on this call here and bring it back to the collaborative. Maybe what our next steps are. And I hate to say it all lands with us, too. I mean,
All of this.
Your support is what makes us able to say, okay, yeah, let's do this. So, but I'm excited. Like I said, I feel like this is all really great. A lot of conversations just aligned for me in like a week's time. So I think that's a sign.
That's when things happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting, which leads us into the next agenda item, which is the well monitoring, tracking, and this fits into what we're talking about, Michelle. It does. I mean, one of the things that to give you a little bit of history, in La Cienega, we've seen a pretty substantial growth in what I call a lot split subdivision. And we've had, I estimate, somewhere between 300 and 400 homes that have gone in the last 30, 40 years. And I'm probably underestimating that. Each one of those has put in a well. And that's all met all the county requirements and all the county rules. But one of the conditions for those new homes was to install meters on their wells and to send in the meter readings on a regular basis. And I think with both the county and the OSE. Well, a few years ago, when I was president of the La Cienega Valley Association, one of our board members went down to the county and discovered it wasn't being done at all. And so we wrote a little letter to the county manager and said, hey, why aren't you enforcing this ordinance? And it is an ordinance, which preceded them to get pretty excited about what to do, how to kind of fix this retroactively. And we've gone through a couple of people and some different ideas about what to do. And we have finally come to a point now where we actually have a group that includes Michelle, Jacqueline Beam, who is the sustainability program manager, Amy Ewing, who is with Stevens and Associates, and then we've got the folks in the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources who are all involved in this effort. And we had our first meeting, and this is an example of what you run into. And I'm not trying to lay blame on anybody, Michelle, but the message, the title of the program was, if I'll remember it, La Cienega Well Monitoring and Tracking Pilot Program. And so that was sent out to all of the property owners in La Cienega with not a clear understanding of what the purpose of this meeting was. And so we have a meeting, a lot of people show up, and there is so much misunderstanding, misinformation, and it just kind of sets things back a little bit because people are, number one, think they're going to get their water cut off, or they're going to have to put meters on their wells. And one of the things we came to realize is we as a community need to do a better job of educating people. And so I'm working with the LCVA, La Cienega Valley Association, and there's going to be a special meeting, just a community water meeting to get people to understand the limitations. I mean, one of the things that people didn't realize that is every well has limitations about how much water it can be used from that well. Every well in New Mexico does. There are limitations. And people said, oh, we don't have any limitations. And so that misunderstanding are things that we need to address. And they need to understand how much our water has been affected over the last 30 or 40 years. And one of the examples I always use is the Acequia de la Cienega, which is the largest of our acequias, has about 45 members. And they've seen approximately 50 to 60% reduction in their water resources in the last 40 years. Now they depend on a well that doesn't function and is expensive to run, doesn't function as well as it should, to provide water to their pacientes. And so this is the kind of stuff that people need to understand, that when they let that water run on their garden longer than it should, that there is an impact, that it has it has an effect on the overall water health of our community. And so anyway, I'm excited about this monitoring program, but Michelle, I'm not real clear at what we're exactly trying to do. I know we're going to be doing measurements of the aquifer and increasing the number of wells. I need to explain that we do have a well aquifer, I guess, measuring, aquifer level measuring program that we've been doing with the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources the last 7 or 8 years, maybe longer. And so we do have some data there in terms of what's happened with our aquifer. And it's stabilized. It's not going down anymore, but it's stabilized at a level that doesn't help our springs. And so that's nice. I'm glad it's not getting any worse, but it doesn't mean that it's getting better either. And so if we, and really, I think one of the things at one point we were talking about are there are certain people in the community, you can look at their property and go, yeah, they're using a heck of a lot more water than they have rights to. And how do you address that with those people? And how do you get them to understand? So I guess I'm just kind of wondering, from your perspective, Michelle, how this program or project is going to work.
Carl, these are all really great questions. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with the path. Just a sec, there's a fighter jet going by. Okay. They've been really loud today. It goes back to the path that Christine has blazed for us with respect to education. And I think that before you can tell people who are freaked out that you're going to meter their wells, because that's your goal, is to meter the wells, that you have to really help them understand that, you know, if their neighbor uses too much, it affects their well. And if they use too much, it affects their neighbor's well. And I think that there has to be some additional meetings that help to educate in in a way that is the least threatening to folks. I mean, and that means, no, we're not going to ask you to just go out right now in the next 3 months and put a meter on your well. We have to convince people that it's their idea, that they need to do this because it's for the future and for even the very near future, to make sure that no one is using too much that will impact the system and eventually their own well. I mean, I understood very well why the message from that meeting was, we're not here to do anything now. We're not here to meter your well. We're not here to take away your water. We're not here to do anything except talk to you. And if we can do that for a while and help people understand that really it needs to be, they need to want this. I don't know what we're going to do, Carl, because really it needs to be a longer term educational program. I mean, I think that's just a given. And I think, you know, breaking it up into workshops and meeting with different groups and doing that kind of outreach is imperative in La Cienega, because like you said, you have these great groups and these people who really care about their community. But if we don't help them see how important it is to live within their means, which is their water right, it's all going to just crash and burn, you know? And so I think that the education part is really important, and we need to get to a place where people want meters so that they can have some control over what is going on in their own well and in their own house and in their own fields. You know, I don't really know the answer, Carl, but I do think that it starts with just some grassroots educational outreach and meetings with people that it's non-threatening, because that meeting apparently was very threatening to people and they didn't like it, and they were loud about not liking it. And, you know, it's just going to take some time, I think. And I would hope that within a year, we could have people knocking down our doors asking for us to install meters on their wells or something. And, you know, I'm thinking that the county needs to do some kind of program where we're providing the kind of meters that we want to have on there, so that we can do drive-bys and just get meter readings and people don't have to deal with it themselves. I think that creating some kind of a meter program would be a really great start to, you know, but that's gonna be in a while. It's gonna take some time. So, you know, I do think that just me getting down there really, and hopefully hiring someone who can just come down and meet with folks on their turf, in their meetings where they have control, I think is really going to be a huge part of getting people to realize how important this really is.
Robert, you had a question?
Yeah, do you have the images of the aquifer, like, you know, really, not graphs. I think that graphs are, like, my experience is that people will look at graphs and then they kind of go, even though they're useful. but they're limited. And I think that images are really powerful. And if so, are there images that you can share about
So, yeah,
the aquifer?
I can talk to Stacy about that. I've worked with Stacy for years, and maybe they can come up with some nice graphics that will help people visualize the difference between what the aquifer kind of looked like before and what it looks like now, and what we're kind of dealing with on a picture kind of scale. It's going to be potentially difficult because that does take some time for folks to develop those kinds of graphics. But I'll talk to Stacy and see if there's anything that they can do to help us. And I have a brand new GIS guy here. Our hydrogeologist that we just hired is actually like an expert in GIS. And so maybe if Stacy can give us shape files or some kind of data that we can actually do some manipulation to create stuff like that would, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Bobby, that it is really important for people to have visual things that compute for them. I mean, like I sit in these meetings with Christine and people from the city who are used to looking at graphs and bar charts and things like that. And you should hear the oohing and awing that goes on when they post these things. But that's because we're all nerds, and we need to present this to people who aren't nerds and who,
Right.
Need that visual. So I will see what I can do with respect to that. And maybe it's a joint effort between us and the Bureau, but I bet we can come up with something.
Yeah, there's also, what about before and after wells, or like, here are the wells in 1950, and here are the wells, and here are the wells now, and all those, 10,000 little blops of wells all over the place. I think that's also impactful.
Yeah,
Andrew.
I totally agree. It just kind of depends on how much data we have. And if we have something that goes back far enough that can be sort of put into some kind of visual format, I will definitely chase that down.
Cool.
Andrew Erdman put something together about wells, and it showed it, this is one point, and then it was another point, and you just get blown away about the number of wells that have come in the last 10 years. So I think there is something already there. And I certainly I don't know how best to track it down. I'm not sure if Andrew has access to that information anymore, but it was, talk about a visual and getting to understand what we're doing to the aquifer in terms of putting too many straws in the glass. So, Robert, you had a question?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Carl. I just wanted to make a comment. I think, Michelle had some really, really good, strong points about, again, coordination and working with the community as opposed to kind of that, the top-down approach. I didn't attend the meeting that occurred, but, again, I do understand, again, working with communities, there's definitely a need to try to get, to work with them for understanding and buy-in. And I think Michelle's points were good on that. I want to add a couple of points. One, again, it sounds like, again, I liked Michelle's idea about a standardized kind of water meter approach, but also, again, I think that the other part of that might be, again, is there some way that we can, incentivize it through, again, is there a way that the county could purchase those or find a funding source or a grant or some way that, again, that the meters could be purchased. I think that might be, again, that might help to, so people could have a better understanding. As you pointed out, Carl, again, the La Cienega watershed conditions were in place since I believe 1996, and there were requirements for people to hook up, either to hook up to a system or or to put a water meter, and we have not had a program to monitor those water meters. But in regard to the connection to the county water system, that could still be something that is out there as well. If there are folks that are out there that have that are within, I think the ordinance indicates within 200 feet or something. I can look at it real quick. But you know, again, are there potentials to hook up? Because I think that is part of the issue as well. Is there a you know, again, if there are county lines in place, and people have those agreements on their plats, that, you know, again, then is there some way that we can incentivize or, you know, as opposed to the, you know, retroactively requiring them to connect to those systems. So I think incentives and information and buy-in from the community are important.
Good, Robert. Maury?
Yeah, I think also I'd like to offer as a county resident who is an enthusiastic water conservation advocate, you know, and following kind of the lead of the city and some of the conversations we've been having, you know, that I'm hearing kind of two pieces. One is reaching community members and helping them understand why metering is so important. But the other piece is having the county infrastructure in place to actually be able to track these data. And so I can see a challenge if a lot of people immediately sign up. Is the county ready to do something productive with that data? Because I think that can also be another frustration for community members if they are going to all of this effort to change the way they're using their water or tracking their water, but they know that the county isn't, you know, doesn't have the staff to monitor or incorporate their data into these larger trends or keep in touch, then they can, that can be a source of frustration. So I think that also having some systems in place that you can really hit the ground running and accept people, you know, accept that data and house it and publish it or be transparent about it and have a really concrete plan for that. And you might already, and I might be speaking out of turn, but I think the idea is that community buy-in is really often supported by that transparency and having a plan and a system already in place a little bit. So as part of that, I might also offer that even if La Cienega is kind of the center of your target zone for where the most wells are going in and where it's you really need to monitor those wells there, maybe it might be worth also just putting out a general call or having, like Christine talked about, having a pilot program where you give out monitoring or meters to interested county residents like myself. Who would very eagerly say, yeah, I want to track my water. This is going to help me track my own leaks in my pipes, or this is really important data that I would like to have too, but I don't know where to go, or I don't quite have the time to do this on my own. And so I'm sure that there are a lot of county residents like that too, that it might be worth kind of getting an in with those low-hanging fruits who want to work with you and are really eager and see already what the need is. Because then, as Bobby was talking about earlier with Brad Lancaster and the rain gardens, like once your neighbors start to see, oh, well, their water isn't cut off, but now they have these data or they're working with the county, that can also help to break down some of those fears and concerns that neighbors have. And then you can kind of work out, but that pilot process can also help you work out your systematic kinks in storing and analyzing the data that you're getting.
I know that the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources is very interested in expanding in the number of wells that and I know one of the question to La Cienega. And yeah, La Cienega gets a lot of attention. And again, it's just a pilot. If this thing works right, then it goes out to the rest of the county and becomes part of the overall water plan. But one of the things in talking to Stacy, and I share Michelle's admiration of Stacy, is they have a lot of information about water in La Cienega, but not so much in La Cieneguilla, and what connection between those two areas are. But again, that information, that kind of scientific information gathering isn't true many other places. And so I think that's where it becomes really important for us to kind of set an example and say, this has really helped us. This is important. We think, people throughout the county should be doing this, and actually throughout the state, in all honesty. But I really understand what you're saying and appreciate that. So, yeah, and what's interesting too, on top of all of this now, and this is something I haven't shared with many people, is that La Cienega and La Cieneguilla has a legislative funding of $150,000 to do water master planning. And so this becomes a part of this. And to me, it's like every community in New Mexico should have a water plan. What happens when this happens? Like kind of anticipating problems and being able to deal with those problems in advance, rather than waiting to the last minute and being out of water and then going to the legislature and say, hey, fix this. Those kind of things. And so I think that as a community, we may be able to do something that would be beneficial to other communities throughout Santa Fe County for sure. But it's an opportunity for us to really kind of determine our water future. And one of the things I'll say right up front is we've got to talk to farmers about having to reduce the amount of water they use and using different watering techniques. And to start considering those as things that are going to be part of our future, because we're going to have to do those kinds of things. So anyway, I appreciate it, Maury. Thank you. Anything else on that topic? So this leads into Maury, and she's going to talk about the watershed planning process. I guess that would be a good way to term
Sure.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so just an update, and I'll share more information as the process keeps going. And I've shared at this point a while ago that in late 2019, we received a grant from the Bureau of Reclamation, Water Smart Cooperative Watershed Management Program. Yeah. To do kind of a preliminary stakeholder assessment to get a sense of where stakeholder priorities were aligned and where there were points of direct opposition or where there were points for future collaboration and things like that. So several of you participated in that process, and we really appreciate it. Over the last, of course, all of this happened during COVID, so we have had to do a lot of pivoting in our research methodology, but we have been working with Todd Kaplan at Geosystems Analysis and Dr. Courtney Flint at Utah State University, who's a social ecologist, and she kind of specializes in community resilience and interactional capacity, which is kind of the amount that different stakeholder and interest groups are interacting and relating to each other in a variety of ways. So we brought her into, and her grad student, Leonard Henderson, to do stakeholder interviews with folks who are very knowledgeable and engaged in the watershed. It was not a stakeholder survey that was meant to be representative of the general population of the watershed, but more, kind of big actors in the watershed. So we invited over 100 folks to participate in this 2-phase study with initial interviews happening, asked a lot of open-ended questions about the watershed, and then those interviews were transcribed, and priority statements were extracted from those interviews and kind of coalesced into 63 priority statements, which then we invited all of the original participants to do this priority sorting exercise called a Q sort, which is kind of this pyramid grid type of exercise. And it's just a way to kind of have another perspective about where priorities are with folks engaged in the watershed, and how priorities kind of relate to each other in terms of what are stronger priorities and what aren't. So of the original 63 interviewees, we were able to reconnect with 42 participants for the Q sort, and we just released our preliminary report of those findings with a lot of the overlaps and kind of the statistical groupings that came out of that sorting process. And the major takeaway is really that there are a lot of different priorities, and the ways that people understand them and sort them are different, but that there are also a lot of overlaps within interest groups that are opportunities for, I would say, collaboration and conversations, beginnings of conversations or continuations, that just because folks all belong to one interest group does not mean that they interpret or understand or prioritize things the same way. And so I think that was a very interesting and important takeaway for us. We just wrapped up 3 workshops over the past weekend to present these findings to participants and other members of the public and general stakeholders, to kind of get a sense of how these priorities may have evolved since we originally did the initial interviews in early 2021. And I just got a sense of people's reactions to that initial report and additional feedback and whatnot. So we're really grateful for those of you who have participated in our workshops this weekend. We had one on Saturday in person at Southside, a virtual Zoom, one on Monday, and another in person at Lafarge Library on Tuesday. And we will be posting either one of the recordings of the presentation, or we will re-record. I think we had some technical difficulties, so we want to make sure that the presentation portion that we post is understandable and clear. And so we might be re-recording that on Monday, which is why I haven't shared the link with you all yet. But as soon as that's up on our YouTube channel, it's basically a more in-depth presentation of the data, and it's aligned exactly with the report. The report is on our website. I can share it with anyone who's interested. Basically, the next steps will be to take the feedback that we've received from the workshops, and if you all were not able to participate in the workshops and would like to take a look at the report, we also welcome your feedback as well. So you can email me, or we can have a phone call if you want to take a look at the report and get back to me. We'll be working on the final report for the next several months, and incorporating feedback from our workshops and for anyone else who sends an email or phone call feedback. And we'll be including, so we'll have the sort of stakeholder assessment data and conclusions. We'll have the updates and feedback that we've received during this period. Then we'll bring in references to previous reports and research and things like that, as well as maps, and then present our conclusions and our recommendations. So this is all part of, this grant was part of a phase 1 Water Smart grant. And I think the Water Smart grant phase numbers have kind of shifted since we got the first grant, but the overall goal is that eventually this will help inform the process of how we can keep moving towards writing a watershed management plan. And so obviously all of you are important in that process. And so I'm still learning a lot more about what exactly that is going to look like, what grant we are going to try to get, or, what avenues, what's our timeline, who needs to be involved, how we're going through that process. Of course, there have been challenges with staff turnover and like so many organizations and departments throughout COVID. And so, picking up those pieces and bringing everyone up to date again and trying to move forward in this way. Do we need to do more stakeholder surveys, or can we move into the planning process more in earnest, I guess, at this point? So those are some of the questions that I'll be looking into over the coming months, and then looking at kind of granting timelines themselves and whatnot. So definitely always open to your feedback, your ideas, and I'll keep you updated when the final report is written. I will definitely share it. We'll have it on our website, and I think that we will be planning to do some presentations on that as well. So I'll invite you all to that, and those will be most likely on our YouTube channel as well, and on our website. So our goal is really to be transparent and collaborative through this process. And this was really part of a foundation laying for future planning. So, we talked to as many folks as we could, but of course, also it was COVID. Most of these conversations were remote, and there are always challenges and boundaries to that. So we don't want it to be kind of a one and done chance to provide feedback or be part of this longer range planning process. We always want to be able to loop folks in regardless of their involvement up to this point. So if you have ideas or comments on how we can do that better, or if you have folks that you think definitely need to be involved in this process going forward, I think you all have my email, but if you don't, it's online, or I can put it in the chat as well. So that's also happy to take any questions, or we can keep this conversation going.
I just think this is neat that we're actually going to have a watershed management plan. I mean, that I know it's no simple task, and there are many challenges ahead, but to really have that in hand would be pretty amazing. Any questions for Maury? Well, thank you, Maury. Sincerely, go ahead.
Just a quick comment, Carl. Nice job, Maury. A really nice job taking over the program. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Patricio. It really means a lot, and excited to keep working with you all.
Well said, Patricio. Okay, so now next agenda item is the Pipeline Coalition RFP, and unfortunately, Michelle's not here because she was going to help me do this. For those of you that don't know, that we have the Pipeline Coalition is a group of 21 organizations, associations, and individuals that's been working with the county and city about the what's going to happen with the pipeline, if and when the pipeline, return flow pipeline's installed. And we came together and put together an RFP that's been reviewed by the city. I believe it's back at the county now for their review. But one of the things we'll be looking for is a facilitator to oversee a planning process. So if you've got any great facilitators out there that you know of, let them, at some point, they're going to be able to apply for this position. And so I just think this is a really important moment for us. And we have been told, and I'm sure we will be able to, that we will have an opportunity to participate in the selection of the facilitator. And I talk about this a lot because having been a volunteer and doing stuff like this for many years. This is the one time where I really feel this is a collaborative coalition, all of those words apply, of a group of very concerned individuals, volunteers who came together with shared values and shared interest in doing what we can to protect the river. And it worked, and it did good work. And it's something I think that we'll see as time goes on. One of the things it does is it allows people to participate from the beginning. So when you go to implement something, people say, oh yeah, I already know about that, no problem. If you don't have that kind of information beforehand, you tend to end up dealing with a lot of resistance. And an example is that meeting that we had at over the water monitoring or the well monitoring program, where people aren't aware of what's going on, and immediately they are going to fight it. They're going to get angry. They're going to get mad. And this process that we use works. And it's something that once we get into the implementation phase, that I believe will go very smoothly, and people understand why we're doing what we're doing and how we're going to be doing stuff. So that's kind of a real quick update on the RFP. I'm, in all honesty, I'm a little surprised we haven't gotten it back yet, but I know that the change in the county manager may have had some impact on that. So we'll just see where that goes. Next thing is the Trace Rios acquisition. And I got to tell you, this is not really a water issue, but it kind of is. Trace Rios is where the three sources of water, the Bonanza Creek, the La Cienega Creek or Arroyo Hondo, and Santa Fe River all come together on this property. It's the largest organic farm in the area. It's 24 acres, and it's run by a gentleman, Alonso Gallegos. And the property is for sale. And Alonso is working on a plan to acquire the property for community purposes. And one of the things I started talking about these demonstration water projects. This would be a beautiful place to do those kinds of things. It would be a beautiful place to look at different farming techniques, maybe do demonstration farms about, using greenhouses or drip irrigation or those kind of things. So I just wanted to kind of put that in people's heads. It's not, I know that Alonso's been working really hard with various government agencies and nonprofits to see what might be able what we might be able to do. It would be such a cool place to use as a community facility, in a sense, to see what, anyway, it's a beautiful location. It's got incredible historic significance. It's one of the original settlements in the 1600s. The houses there was burned during the Pueblo Revolt. Right above it is one of the first, the La Cienega pueblos, overlooking the valley. And it's where Juan Anati came through in 1598 with his caravan. It included, 500 people who became just farmers, 150 soldiers. I'm trying to remember all my facts. 150 soldiers. Now, 150 soldiers doesn't sound like a lot, but they brought their families and brought their slaves, and they brought their horses. So it was a big contingency. And the thing that always blew me away is when they came into this valley, they had 7,000 head of livestock as part of their caravan. And so as a little Pueblo kid sitting around playing in the backyard of the Pueblo, the only domesticated animals I've ever seen are turkeys and dogs. And all of a sudden there's cows, there's horses, there's pigs. And I can just imagine that kind of shock. In fact, when they first came through, some of the Indians thought that the men and horses were together. It's like they were the same, they were like connected, or that the horses were large dogs. So anyway, that's just kind of an aside. So anything else today? For those of you that don't know, there's a proposed shooting range on the Caja, which is the area above La Cienega or La Cieneguilla. And there's a comment period for the BLM through the end of, through October 24th, if you want to comment on that. In my opinion, it should be placed completely and totally somewhere else. And that's the comment I will make to the BLM, because I think there are other places that would be better for it than the Caja. So any other questions today? Any input, thoughts? And Christine, thanks again. Yeah, I'm very excited about the opportunities ahead of us. So good to see all of you. Thank you for being, yes, Bobby.
So Alonzo has purchased the Tres Rios.
No, absolutely
No.
not. It is for sale. He's working on a plan to try and acquire it.
Oh, okay, so
Yes.
it has not happened yet.
No, it is for sale. Trust for Public Lands is involved, Greg Heiner. I know he's talked to some of our legislators. And I don't think there's a concrete plan yet as to exactly what to do, but I know that the seller, the owner of the property, is interested in what they're doing. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and see what we can.
Okay,
So,
so what about Alonzo getting in touch with Juliana at Reunity? Because they purchased that farm.
this
It's
is
not
a-
as big, but Reunity Resources, you know, the old community farm on Agua Fria.
This purchase is about $3.5 million. So it's a little different than, yeah, but I'll certainly mention that to him.
But that might be a really good connection. You know, at least talking with Juliana and her husband, whose name I can never think of. But anyway, yeah, those folks.
I'll let you
Ginger.
know that.
Yeah.
All right. Adeline, would you email me?
Yeah, I think I have your email address.
Adeline is not as familiar as some of you will be as of this Sunday. I'm taking a small group on a tour of some stops along the river this Sunday. And so I'll plan something special for you, Adeline, at some point too. So
Thank
we'll
you.
get you down there.
And
That's really-
actually, I do not have your email address. Do you mind typing it in the chat? Thank you. Also, I just want to let everyone know that Robert and I are coordinating with Alonso.
Oh, excellent. Oh yeah, open space. Boy, we had a lot to talk about.
Just wanted to follow up with Adeline's point as well, Carl. You know, again, I think we're talking about protection of water resources here, and one of the programs that Alonzo is looking at is our TDR program. And as part of our TDR program, there's a potential to also protect the water rights through the TDR program as well. So if you know, again, if this project, which we're currently reviewing, if he qualified the project with the water rights on it, the idea there would be to tie the water rights to the land so they could not be, so they would be permanently preserved, as well as the property itself through our TDR program.
TDR, if you don't know, it's transferred development rights. So that's
Sorry,
something
thank you,
that-
Carl.
yeah, understood. Cool.
And as the name implies, that would also transfer development rights off of that property, meaning that developers wouldn't be able to go in there and build subdivisions. So that's what we're aiming for.
Yay.
Thanks for your work on that. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Mostly Robert. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, folks. Thank you all. Maury, thanks as always for the Watershed hosting this, and I'll certainly make sure that people understand this is one of the recordings that they really need to look at and pay attention to. So thanks to everybody. See you later. See you
Thank
this
you, Carl.
afternoon, actually.
Thank
Christine.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.